I don't know how he do it.
Well, hello everyone, and welcome in once again to a rockin' awesome night up here in Boston. But we have got a program here that is really unique. We've got a program where you can call up and talk to Anne Marie. You can call in from anywhere in the world. Our telephone number scrolling across the bottom. And if you want to call in on the internet, I'll put a link up in YouTube for that too. So by all means, call Anne Marie in and say hello to her. Anne Marie is a former Jehovah's Witness, and what we do here at the Six Screens is we listen to people who call in and tell us how they feel about the Watchtower organization. Now, I have to tell you, though, and you know it anyways, I believe, the Watchtower organization, Jehovah's Witnesses, they're a very dangerous and destructive cult. And I was in it for 50 years. Anne Marie was in for, I think, 30 years plus. And, what we try to do here, we're not picking on Jehovah's Witnesses per se. We're picking on an organization that's tyrannical, an organization that caused a lot of problems in people's lives, seriously. Not just little incidental, trivial problems, monumental issues. They cause divorce, they cause family breakup, children being shunned, relatives being shunned. So it's not some nice going organization that you can cozy up to. These guys are scandalous, and Anne Marie will tell us all about them. So come on, Anne Marie, and say hello to us.
Hello, my brother. Happy Six Screen Saturday. It's the best day of the week, huh?
Well, I'll tell you what it is. It's a rocking day. I'll tell you that. A lot goes into putting it all together and getting people to be able to come on. And you've been a faithful moderator here on the Six Screens, and we always appreciate your presence, Anne Marie.
Well, we appreciate you and Susan.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you what, we've been doing it for 20 years. And I tell you, though, every day, really, people are leaving the Watchtower. And right now, there's more leaving than ever before. Now, you might say, well, wait a minute, Rick. Is it 250,000 people leaving? Because that's how many people left after 1975. Well, there might not be 250,000 people leaving right now, but they're silently leaving. And what I mean by that, they're staying in the organization pretending to be one of Jehovah's Witnesses when they're not. There could be upwards of 4 million of these ones. They call them PIMOs, PIMO. And of course, that's an acronym for physically and mentally out. But there's a lot of witnesses that are starting to wake up and smell the coffee. And Anne Marie, you got the forum. Yeah, you can get people calling in tonight and share their thoughts with me, hopefully.
You know how I am. Those ones, like you just said, there are those who are starting to wake up. You don't go from a completely believing, head up of governing bodies behind, Watchtowerite to completely mentally out. There was a segue. There's an in-between stage where you just said they're starting to wake up. That's the PIMQ stage. Physically in, but mentally questioning. And that is, my brother, that has to be the absolute scariest, most traumatizing, place to be in your heart, because you're scared, because that programming, it doesn't just fool you with lies. They program you with these fear buttons, terror buttons. Oh no, Satan's taken over my mind, And I pray for them, because they're so scared and troubled, and they need answers. And if you ever, like you refer to any Jehovah's Witnesses are listening in, you don't have any PMEs listening in, because their heads are up the governing bodies behind. But if any Jehovah's Witnesses are listening, they're PIMQs, because they are trying to find answers without being caught.
Well, you're right. You're absolutely right. It's amazing how much control they have over people, Anne Marie. And it's really neat. You would think on a beautiful day like today that people would be out doing things, but I'll tell you, got a lot of people coming into the Six Screen. So that's a wonderful thing, Anne Marie.
That's because you provide a safe place. You created and provided and started the Six Screens family, my brother.
Well, it's a good family. I'm part of it, and I like it. I love our family. We got a very good family here. We're all happy. We got a lot of people. I talked to a man today that, well, he was out there in Wisconsin actually, and the poor man, he's been hurt so much by the witnesses. And I called him today. I had some people say, Rick, give this man a call and talk to him, which I did. And I talked to him, and then this man has been, you can really tell some people have been really hurt by this organization, Anne-Marie. Others get away pretty much unscathed. But this man really is suffering from some type of PTSD or some type of
I think you're absolutely right.
He's suffering so much. All he can remember, he says his mother was really, really strict. And, one day he did something small. It wasn't anything big. And so his mother beat him, and she took out a belt. She started whacking him with it. And then she broke her fingernail, and it aggravated so much. She turned the belt around and started hitting him with the buckle. Now he remembers that. So, he was really hurt by this. But see, this is, some people get away pretty good, but a lot of people have been really hurt, Anne-Marie.
Well, Watchtower, sadly enough, used to actually promote beating your children. And I can't tell you how many times I was counseled, quote unquote, that I wasn't doing my job as a spiritual parent. I'd always got those scriptures, in case you beat him with the rod, he will not die, and the rod of discipline will move foolishness from the boy, or whatever. They were always about beating your children. And you must remember, how many kids got dragged down the aisle of the Kingdom Hall knowing they were going to get beat. And they even had a demonstration at a circuit assembly, and I was a hardcore, arrogant Nazi JW. I believed everything. And we're at the circuit assembly, and the demonstration was about disciplining your children, help them to grow up and serve Jehovah. And it showed this father with a little 7 or 8-year-old little boy who had done something, and he's quietly counseling the little boy, and the boy is politely listening, being very respectful, and he asked him questions about, now, does this please Jehovah? Don't we want to please Jehovah? And blah, 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 making him read scriptures and this and that. I mean, the boy what is the point of discipline? It's to guide the child, to help them see whatever they're doing wrong, right? Well, if they see they're wrong and they're apologetic and repentant and respectful, is that when you're going to turn around and beat them? But that's what he did. He read the last scripture about beating your child, and he said, well, that's what the scriptures say. That's what Jehovah says, and that's exactly what I'm going to do right now. On the stage at the circuit convention. And you know what the real nasty thing was, my brother? As I'm sitting there in shock, all the audience were laughing and clapping like, yeah, beat them. This is what they promote. It's horrible. How do you expect children to, quote unquote, grow up to love Jehovah? If you're going to treat them like that, if every time it's time to go to meeting, in their head, they're terrified that, if I don't sit still, if I make a move, or if I get upset or whatever, I'm going to get beat. But that's how it was.
You're not kidding either when you say, you're not kidding one bit. You're not exaggerating one bit. That's how it was. I mean, it was terrible. Even the Kingdom Hall I went to. And there was a family there. They had 3 cute little kids, a little girl and two little boys. And, I won't use their names at all, but the father was a big guy, and they were very cruel to their children. I can remember, you're sitting in the Kingdom Hall. Oh, Daddy, don't hit me. Don't hit me. No, don't take me in the back room. And I mean, it really was something. It really would make you, and you feel like saying something, but the elders, they would support that behavior. That's a sad part about it, Anne-Marie. The elders would support it, but all of us sat there, and I'm saying, no, that little child shouldn't be beat like that, and I mean, beat hard too, not just a tap on the rear end. I mean, slapped and really hit hard,
and threatened. And you know what's sad is because I wish I could find the article, but I remember a Watchtower article, and it had a black and white drawing of a sister yanking her child, not really hard, but down the aisle toward the bathroom in the Kingdom Hall. And the little boy looks like he's about 2.5, and he's looking up, tears streaming down his face, and he's praying to Jehovah, help me. And everybody thought, oh, how sweet. He's leaning on Jehovah. And I thought it was sweet too, until after I got out and my brain kind of cleared up from the Watchtower cult indoctrination. I'm like, oh my God, that is severe child abuse, causing him terror and trauma. His own mother, the one who's supposed to coddle him and love him and protect him, is going to beat him, and he knows nobody in the Kingdom Hall, who all know what's going to happen to him. Not one person is standing up to help this poor little 2-year-old baby. And so he's crying to Jehovah to help, and everybody thinks it's cute. How twisted. This is how twisted. That's just an example.
Well, it's a good example, and it's not an example that's far-fetched. It's an example that's truthful. It really, really is. And I tell you, we've had, in the 20 years of doing this program, we've had numerous people come on here, and some of the abuse these children. I had one. She was a special pioneer. She landed up as a special pioneer, but when she was a young girl, her father, and everyone thought he was an angel. And I'll never forget this call we had here. Everyone thought that she was an angel, that he was an angel, and he was an elder, and he'd go to the Kingdom Hall, and he looked so good and smiled, and then he'd go home, and he would really be so aggravated with the whole family and beat the kids. But one day he came home from the meeting, one night, I should say, came home from the meeting, the kids are tired, and so he walked in the door, he was aggravated about something, and so the dog was aggravating him, and so he started beating the dog with his book bag. Yeah, and I'll never forget that story, and scared the kids to death. Here's the little dog being beat by the elder with a book bag. I mean, that's a nice example for little children to see that, seeing your daddy beat your dog up, Jeez.
Hello, Rick, Mary Ann,
Oh, hi.
Anne Marie. Hi. Sorry.
Right here, hon.
This is Fran. Hi, Anne Marie. Yeah, you really got me in with this conversation.
Yeah, I was just watching you and Joe on that short video you guys did about love. That was good.
Thank you. Well, as you're talking about disciplining and everything, as you know, we had 3 children and one on the way when we started studying. So the 3 children, we never spanked them or anything. We just told them, and they listened to us, and we never had any problems. Well, the 4th one comes along, and he's born while we're studying, and 6 months old, and he's fussing around in his seat. He's only 6 months old. So they said, oh well, just take him in the back room and just give him a spanking and he'll settle down. So we did, and I didn't beat him or anything, but I mean, yes, that settled him down. But it's like I look back on that now and I go, how cruel. 6 months old, he was hardly sitting up, and I'm taking him in the back to settle him down. And I just felt, and then, we really took it to heart. Anytime any of them disobeyed us, we really gave it to them. And if they talked back to us, I washed their mouth out with soap, and I think back and I go, how cruel that is. I just hate myself for the way I treated them. But like I said, it was like night and day. Once we went to the Kingdom Hall, okay, now you've got to discipline, and you got to spank your children, and you got to do whatever you can. One brother in a talk said, even if you have to sit on them. And it's like, sit on them. You know what happens when you sit on a person? You can basically suffocate them. So anyway, that's what we did, and we're very ashamed of it, and we hate the way we treated our children.
Well, I am so sorry you went through that, because it goes against your natural instincts to mother your child.
You want to say anything?
When I had my...
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was standing in the back room, back of the hall with my 5-month-old baby, so she was fussy. And I'm standing back there rocking her, paying attention to the meeting. And the sister that I love very much, she was a real sweet sister, but she was always beating her kids with a wooden spoon. And she had year-old twins that she was constantly, trying to get to behave. And she walked up to me on her way to spank her kids yet again. And she said, Anne Marie, you need to start disciplining your daughter. And I'm like, I looked at her, I said, excuse me? She's 5 months old. She said, well, you got to start young. I said, sister, she's 5 months old. And she just looked at me like, you just don't get it. You need to get on your job.
Oh, my goodness. Well, good for you. You mentioned wooden spoon, and that brought back a memory. I used to, because I would hurt my hand, hitting them. And so Joe said, well, just get a wooden spoon. And I would carry a wooden spoon in the diaper bag. And one day the wooden spoon was missing. So I don't know till this day. I hope it's like I never used it again, and I'm thankful. But we did other things, that we're just so ashamed of, and we wish we never did that.
Well, during the mid to late 70s, maybe early 80s, all sisters that I knew of carried a wooden spoon in their purse. Oh, and that was the beating tool of choice. But it's horrible.
It is. Well, thank you for talking about it, because, we need to hear it. It brings back bad memories, but we need to understand this and, get over it and live our lives with love, like Vern always says, and just be loving to each other. Yeah,
well, now they're not so mean, but back then they really promoted beating your kids. And like I said, I got counseled several times that I wasn't being strict enough and I wasn't beating them enough, and I quoted those scriptures about the rod of discipline so many times. And my kids look back and my kids remind me that I was abusive and that I beat them, and I really didn't beat them, but I called it that. But I would always, somebody gave me a tip: don't ever hit your kids in anger, which I never did. Well, and
I know.
He told me, he said, before you spank your kids, tell them how many they get, 1 or 2, or so I'd always say, okay, you get 2 or 3. And then sometimes I did them one more time, and I go, that's for pushing me, because I don't want to spank you. I don't want to be that way. Anyway. So it was all because of the organization. That's what the organization and just totally made us feel like if your child isn't perfect in every way, every single time, you're not doing your job.
Yeah. They even had a local needs talk because there was a split in the congregation. Some of them believed in spanking like the old ones, and then the younger generation, they didn't. So there was this split, and they had a local needs part on it. And it's like, oh, brother, we should have known then. We should have just gotten out then. But anyway, live and learn, right?
Right. Yeah. This is. I just tell. Go ahead. Is this Donald? Yeah, this is Donald.
I'll let Donald talk now. Hi, Donald. I'll be listening. Thank you, Anne Marie. Okay. Thank you.
The spanking a 5-month-old baby, or even what they would call beating, that's ridiculous. I mean, the baby, it's 5 months old. 5 months ago, that child was born. So basically, you're telling them to beat or spank, in this case, maybe, a baby who was just born 5 months ago. So basically, the baby's practically a newborn. Not really a newborn, but you know what I mean. That organization is totally evil. They are totally evil because they're misrepresenting that scripture about, spare the rod, spoil the child, or whatever that is.
Thank you.
God's not. I don't think God was talking about beating your kids. I think what God was talking about was just discipline. I don't think the rod really meant spanking. I could be wrong on that, but I don't think God meant to beat your kids. There's a difference between spanking and beating. You know, giving.
Right.
I was spanked when I was growing up. My mother, my father, you know, not so much my father, but my mother spanked me when I was growing up, only when I needed it. But he didn't just go out and beat me. Of course, we weren't Jehovah's Witnesses at all, but still, I mean, being spanked was fine, but beating, that's a different animal altogether. That's just going out of your way just to take out your anger on a kid. And that's what Watchtower wants you to do. They know those kids, they know their meetings aren't for children. Children don't get anything out of those meetings. They don't have any set up for children during those meetings like most churches have. I mean, the church I go to, we have stuff for kids. We don't expect our kids to be in the main church service because kids are kids. They're not going to sit still. They're not going to do that. That's why we have, you know, things at churches for kids to help them to play around or do whatever they want to do, and they can still learn the Bible, you know, in their own way. But to have a child sit perfectly still through a Kingdom Hall business meeting, that's basically what it is, or a marketing seminar, is ridiculous. I mean, it's totally ridiculous. And then they expect that child to behave, and then that sister walking up to you and telling you that you need to spank your 5-month-old baby, that sister's got a problem. But it's really not her problem. She's just tied into that evil organization.
Yeah, and like I said, she was actually a very loving, sweet sister, but she was completely blinded by the programming. But the thing is when I decided one day that maybe someday I will go back, I didn't go back for a number of years, but when my kids were really little, I decided I better train them to sit and to not, you know, get up or move or anything. And I did it in one day, less than one day. And it was mean, but I didn't want never to have to ever drag any one of my kids to the back room. And I never did, because I trained them so that they could, you know, feel good. I didn't want them to not want to go to the meeting. And how in the world could it be a spiritual paradise, happiest people on earth, for children when they're terrified to go to the Kingdom Hall because they're going to get beat?
Yeah. No, that's no paradise. That's a paradise for pedophiles, and it's a paradise for evil is what it is.
It is, Donald. Did you want to add anything else to that? I need to introduce the show.
No, that was it.
But I don't want you to go away. I always love listening to your comments. I hope you know that.
I don't have anything else right now.
Well, if you do later, please let us know. I want to welcome everyone into Six Screen Saturday. Yay! For me, happiest day of the week. This show is touched by the tentacles of the Watchtower and being indoctrinated that you have to beat your kids, or they have to be perfect little robot children, serving the Watchtower, being perfect. That was part of it, the indoctrination. I want to welcome the PIMQs. I know I say it every week, but I'm going to keep saying it. The PIMQs are the Jehovah's Witnesses who are physically in, but mentally questioning. They're not mentally out because they don't know, but they have questions. And you know, in the Watchtower, if you have questions, you will be in trouble. You're talking like an apostate. They might pull you into a judicial committee and nail you down about your loyalty to the party, your loyalty to the governing body. They don't care about your loyalty to Jehovah. They don't care about your loyalty to Jesus or even to the Bible. It's all about loyalty to the governing body. And if they even suspect that you're not totally believing in the governing body, that they really speak for God, for Jehovah, and if you still seem hesitant, they will label you an apostate and ruin your life. And you know that's true, Donald. So anyway, welcome everyone, the PIMQs, physically in, mentally questioning. And I hope that they feel free to listen to our shows either today or in the archives on YouTube. I always want to welcome our PMOs. They are still physically in the Watchtower, but mentally they are out because you know what? They got answers to their questions. They buckled down, bit the bullet, and did the research. And the more they did research, all the facts are there. It's not like it was when Rick and I first came out. There was no way to find out what was really going on. So anyway, today is the day our Six Greens family can come in, speak freely, talk about how you feel, your opinion, your experiences. This is your show. I am here just to listen to you, validate you, support you. We support each other. And just in case I didn't mention it, today is May 16th, 2026. And I wish to God that way back when they were saying I wasn't going to live to go to school or to get a career or ever grow up, way back then, I had no idea that I would grow up and I would have children and raise them, and I would have grandchildren and help raise them. All my grandchildren are grown, and now I have 7 great-grandchildren that I'm helping to raise. So they lied. They lied. If we had only known that we were going to live past 1975, and we would see this day, May 16, 2026, we have to realize that the Watchtower lied to us. Today's theme is a word that I came across during the week, and it's from 2 Greek words, atelo and phobia. Atelophobia is literally the fear of imperfection, the fear of never being good enough. And doesn't the Watchtower seek to totally infect all of their members, their uneducated, gullible members, with this phobia of not being good enough? Of course they do. We know that's true. They rule us with shame and fear and guilt, along with their emotional blackmail, losing their family, all their friends, their entire support system, life, destroying their life as they have known it. It's just destroyed. And this has happened to countless thousands because they believed the Watchtower, because they tried and tried and tried. And it wasn't a spiritual paradise. It wasn't the happiest life that they could imagine, giving up, even medical care. A lot of people gave up medical care because, oh, well, Armageddon's coming, gave up their education, gave up scholarships. This is an organization that's destroyed so many lives. Excuse me, and the people that have committed suicide. Everybody that comes on knows usually at least 1 or 2 that they knew personally who committed suicide over the Watchtower. I personally grew up with 2 different kids and from 2 different families, and they were delightful, delightful kids. And they grew up because of the trauma and being disfellowshipped and the depression that they suffered, the anxiety they suffered. They both killed themselves. And, they're gone. And, I was suicidal when I was a kid. I used to lay on my cold wooden floor in my flat and listen to the song by the Doors, The Crystal Ship, and I would listen to it over and over, and I would just be laying on that cold floor, planning ways of how I could die, because to me it was the only way I could escape the constant pressure. God's going to kill me. I can't be this perfect witness. I can't even be a little bit perfect witness. So God's going to kill me. And I'm thinking, why not just get it over with? Because this is what the Watchtower does to our brains when they instill this horrible fear. Oh, you're going to die at Armageddon if you don't serve us. If you ever fall out of favor with us, Jehovah doesn't hear your prayers. You're a walking dead person. Everybody's shunning you. Can you imagine that? It is beyond insanity. It is sick. It is twisted. Anybody want to comment? I start talking and I just don't shut up.
Well,
This show is for you. Go ahead, my brother.
I got one thing to say about the Watchtower organization on that one. Remember what Jesus himself said. There's not one person that is righteous. No, not one good person on earth. Not one. So these governing body members that think they are so good and so great, they better go back and read their Bible, because it says that no one on this planet is good enough, and no one can be good enough, because the only way we can be good enough is through Jesus Christ. And that's why Jesus came, so he could be good enough for us, so that we can have his righteousness. The Watchtower tries to steal that from Jesus and say, no, they're the righteous ones. You should obey them. But no, I'm sorry, Watchtower. You've missed the ship. You've missed the boat. You need to go back to Watchtower and read your Bible.
But sadly, in the Watchtower organization, not only is the Bible the second place to their policies and their rules and their doctrines, but they actually, though they claim to go by the Bible and respect God's word, they actually have the audacity to use God's word and manipulate his word, the scriptures, in such a way to make it appear that whatever scriptures or whatever they're using, it makes it appear that God's word is supporting whatever they happen to be saying at any particular time. They're so manipulative. So how can you be twisting and manipulating God's word to shine a light on how great you are, how right you are, and then say that you love Jehovah, you love his word, you represent him? They speak out of both sides of their mouth. And it's just like the book that George Orwell wrote in the 40s called 1984, because he predicted, 1984, this is how it would be. Double speak. They have their history, and then they have to change a history, and everybody has to believe the new version of the history, always being watched, always being reported on, always being judged, always being threatened, the punishment. That's exactly what George Orwell wrote about. And it's come to my mind many times, we should all get that book and really read it. Even Rick has referred to certain parts of that book, because it's true. It's so many things in that book, George Orwell's 1984, is reflected in a lot of what we experienced in Watchtower, the way the governing body treats us and the way they train their Gestapo enforcer elders to treat the flock. And that's why.
That is so right, Anne Marie. I was very fortunate to have had you as a friend as I was leaving the Watchtower. And I think one thing that we talked about that we noticed was that many in the Watchtower, especially the governing body, they were either didn't have children, rarely did they have children. Many of them weren't married, especially till later in life. So they never really experienced some of the problems that young people have when they get married or starting a family. They were giving all kinds of advice, but they had never experienced it themselves. And sure, everyone like perfect kids sitting in the Kingdom Hall. That'd be wonderful. But you know what? That's called a fairy tale, right? A fairy story book about things like that, because some kids just naturally will be like that, but some kids won't. So you just have to work with what you have. And again, these people, they preach about, they don't know anything about what the Bible says. They're always twisting scriptures. They don't know about children because they don't have them. They didn't start getting married until later. In fact, a lot of them were they in foreign countries, and then they were called into Bethel. So there you go.
Right. Good point, my sister. Good point. It's just so beyond twisted, and I shudder to look back and to realize how very twisted I was because of that organization, because I literally threw myself into trying to be the best Jehovah's Witness I could be. And so whatever they said to me, that was straight from God. Literally, any sister would criticize me or say you're doing too much this or not enough that, you need to do it this way or what. I always, this is how bad I was. I would listen to whatever anybody would say and feel like they were speaking from Jehovah. This was a mess.
You know, I never spanked my kids ever, except we had a Watchtower. I think there was something on it. So you know what I did? I went back into the bathroom and spanked my oldest. And she wasn't, I think she was maybe a year old. Because I thought that was what I was supposed to do to be a faithful witness, was to spank my kids. And you talked about that this evening already. But just think about that. A year old, 6 months old children? That's ridiculous, but yet, to serve Jehovah, that's what you must do.
Yeah, you must treat his little precious babies like that. So wrong. I didn't do many good things in my life, but I can honestly say all the years I drug my babies to the hall, they never had any fear that I would ever do that. Ever.
You were a good mom. I know you were a good mom. I mean, I wasn't in the... No, but from talking with you, the things that you said you did with them and how you were always trying to, but you were trying to be the perfect mom and correcting all your mistakes, which is hard to do with the Watchtower, but you had it pretty rough. And they did not treat you kindly, ever. I mean, the story that I remember the most is you were walking to the Kingdom Hall with your kids, and you had the baby carriage, and you're carrying the baby, and you're walking beside you, and the brothers and sisters are driving right by in their cars, watching you drag all your kids to the Kingdom. I'll never forget that.
Well, I never mind. I prayed to God that I wanted to live, had to move, and I prayed to him, please let me where I can walk to the Kingdom Hall, because it was torture when before in my other place, I had no way. I was out in the middle of nowhere. So 3 times a week I'd have to get out my address book, and they didn't have caller ID. So it was so stressful to call a brother or sister. And of course they would always answer the phone in a pleasant voice. Hello. And I go, hi, sister so-and-so. Hi, brother so-and-so. And they know it was me, and the down burn in their voice. Hello, Anne Marie. Because they knew why I was calling. I was bugging my brothers to get me to the Kingdom Hall and get a ride back. And it was so bad that at one point an elder who was actually very kind to me came up to me after the meeting, and he said, Anne Marie, I need to talk to you. And I'm like, what is it? And he says, you know what? I've been getting a lot of phone calls complaining about you constantly bothering brothers for a ride. And, you know, it's just, they're sick of it. And I'm like, but brother, I have no way to get to the Kingdom Hall unless I ask for a ride. And he just looked at me and he wouldn't acknowledge that. He basically said, it's your responsibility to get yourself and your kids to the meeting. I said, brother, there's no way. It was miles to walk. There were no real bus service that would get me there, even if it could, too much money. And I tried to explain to him, this is the reality. This is the only way I can get. And all he said was, Anne Marie, the brothers are tired. And then he walked away because they were bombarding him with complaints. Well, that's why I was so upset when this one brother who was quite wealthy, and he was telling people at the Kingdom Hall, hey, I have this really great car. It was my mom's car. She just died. I kept it in tip-top condition. It's in perfect condition. It's a 4-door. All I want for the car is the $500 because I just put $500 worth of brand new tires on it 2 months ago, and that's all I want. And I'm thinking, and nobody, this is a funny thing, nobody in the congregation needed a car. They all had 2 and 3 cars. I needed a car desperately. And again, this was a very arrogant brother, and he never spoke to me. He wouldn't even look at me. And I was so sheepish, and I waited for the other brothers to walk away. And I kind of, tentatively approached him and I said, brother, I need a car desperately. Would you consider selling it to me and letting me make payments? Because I was so poor, but I knew I could do it. $50 a month if he would do it. It would take me a year, but I could do it. And he looked at me like I had insulted him. He gave me a dirty look and he said, I want cash. And he walked away. And I thought, wow, if I could just have a car that would, I knew it was an in perfect condition car. So I went and asked a brother that I trusted, a nice elder who was always very nice to me. And I said, brother, I really want to buy Brother Conley's car. I need a car desperately. I think I was still pregnant with my 5th child. I'm like barely 23 years old, no help. And I said, I'm just asking your advice, for maybe who I could approach for a loan because Brother Conley wants full cash. And then it got all the way around the congregation that I was bugging everybody for money, which wasn't true. I got pulled into a judicial committee over me bothering the brothers for money. And I was like, God, why are they making such a big molehill out of a simple need? And I had 3 committee meetings over me trying to get a car, like I had done something wrong. And they were chastising me and grueling me and this and that. And then they said, well, we're going to have another committee meeting and we want you to bring in all your bills and proof of how much what your income is. And we want to see your checkbook register and we want to see how you spend your money. And well, it's humiliating because I was doing a good job. So I did. Next committee meeting, I brought in everything. And they were going through everything and they were like, well, you don't have enough money. There's no way with as little money as you have that you could afford to pay payments. And I knew I could. I'd done it before. And one brother under his breath said in a real haughty voice, he goes, well, I don't understand why she just doesn't take the bus. Well, I felt like saying, well, gee, brother, since you think that's so easy, why don't you take my 5 kids and you do the bus? You think it's so great? I mean, I'm talking go to the store, take your kids to school, doctor's appointments, to the Kingdom Hall. I mean, everybody needs a car. And they just were horrible to me. But the thing is, that's the way it is. That's the way it is. And
Well, they should do, you know what? I don't think we would see something on the assembly with an outcome like this. That's what I would tell the brothers. Lady, you're treating me, would this be an assembly? Some kind of a, what do they call it? Those little things that they put together, those little skits. You wouldn't have that. Are you kidding? Because that's reality.
Yeah.
No, but that's what I would say to them, brothers. Would you have a skit on the assembly? You treating me like this? Is this Christian?
Right.
I mean, that's terrible. I mean, they call that paradise. Really? I mean, you were needing help. You were needing a way to get to the hall. That's all you were asking for, was just transportation to get so you can get to the meetings. Because if you didn't get to the meetings, then they would harp on you. Why don't you come to the meetings? And blah 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 blah. See, they would have turned that on you. They would turn around. They would have turned that against you as well, because evidently you needed help to get to the meetings. And asking for rides, my goodness, I mean, I'm a blind person. I can't drive, okay? I have to have rides. And fortunately, I do have good people who take me to church, and they don't mind picking me up. But yeah, I've been in situations where people have denied me rides or whatever because they didn't want to take me. But, you know, when you're in a situation where you can't either afford a car or whatever, and you just need a ride somewhere, the least a person could do is be nice enough to help you. But some people, a lot of people don't anymore. I mean, it's hard, you know, especially as a blind person. I have to rely on people for all my transportation needs. Yeah, even here in Beaumont, we have a paratransit service, which is a bus service that's for the disabled and stuff. And we have to pay like $1.50. It's actually $2.50 each way. But it's a handicap bus that comes and picks me up when I need to go somewhere. But I have to call them a day in advance, and then schedule my ride and then go and then whatever. But you know, that's why I keep telling people I want to buy a Tesla, because if I can get my own self-driving car, I wouldn't have to bother people anymore. Not that the people from my church would mind picking me up, because they don't, but just having my own transportation would be great. But yeah, I understand how that feels, because I've been in that situation myself where people have denied me, rides at times. It doesn't happen very often, but in your case, when you really needed it bad enough, they should have helped you. They should have gotten in there and said, "Okay, sister, I'll come and pick you up and take you to the hall." Because evidently they knew you didn't have any way of getting there. And then those brothers making you bring in your financial statements so they can snoop in your records.
That was so humiliating.
Yeah, to snoop in your records to see what you can and cannot afford, that's none of their business.
Yeah, and I still think back to Brother Conley, who was a very wealthy man. He had 2 or 3 cars. I overheard him telling the brothers and sisters he was talking to, trying to, unload his car, that he didn't need the money for the car. He said, "The car is free. I just want the $500 I paid for the tires I put on last month." So it's like, why wouldn't he make payments? It's not like he needed money. And I'm an honest sister. And like I said, I had paid off a loan at $50 a month. It took me 3.5 years, because some social worker that trusted me, I needed a vehicle, and I had a chance to buy a VW van for $1,400. And that social worker, knowing me, she went to the bank and took out a loan and gave me the payment book, and I paid it all off, even though it took 3.5 years. So it's not like I hadn't had the experience. And when you only have a little bit of money, I was really good at juggling. I kept up every single bill. And then if maybe my boys needed some clothes and shoes, I would take that bill money and buy them clothes, and then take 2 or 3 months to catch up. And then I would do it again and buy them all their shoes. And this is how I did it. Yeah. I call it juggling. And it's not like I don't know how to handle money. And the brothers, when the third committee meeting, I can't believe I had to meet 3 times with a committee meeting over me needing a car, asking for help. And they finally said, "Well, we'll find a way to lend you $500, but you're going to have to get a full-time job." Well, by now, I had a newborn baby, and the only job I could get was working the graveyard shift. Now, I want to ask you, how do you take care of a newborn baby, a girl that just turned 3, and take care of them all day, and get your kids off to school, and take care of them when they get home, and feed them, and do the laundry, and now I'm supposed to go to work, drive to another city where my job was? It almost killed me, because they decided that I had to get a full-time job. They didn't take into consideration that the babysitter, who all she did was come over and sleep in my bed, she didn't take care of my kids. And they didn't consider, where's my paycheck going to go? It's going to go to pay the babysitter. It cost me more money. They put me in such dire financial straits just because they thought I didn't have a brain. I didn't know what I was doing. All I asked for was somebody give me a loan, I can pay it. And no.
Imagine if you had called Watchtower needing that same help, like a ride to the Kingdom Hall.
Oh, my goodness.
If you had called the organization itself, they would have told you to either go to the city or go to use the bus like you mentioned earlier, or whatever. They wouldn't have helped you. So basically those guys at the Kingdom Hall and those brothers you were talking about, they're just a reflection of what Watchtower would have done.
Yeah, it was just the humiliation and the constant realization that I was seen as a problem. I was seen as a burden. And, nobody wanted that phone call. I was wondering if it's possible you could come, because they'd have to come all the way out to where I lived. I mean, I was a burden, which is why I asked Brother Conley, please, it's not like he needed them. This is the thing. He didn't need the money. But the look on his face like I had insulted. How dare I speak to him? The man never even looked at me the whole time I was in that congregation. Well, of course, gossip was I was a slut and flirting with everybody's husbands, and I was used merchandise and damaged goods and all crappy stuff they'd say. But, you know, it was really bad. And I finally got to the point where I gave up because the brother had told me the brothers are just sick and tired of you calling. And I remember thinking, you know what, I'm not going back. I'm not going back. And the sweet sister who would set aside one day a week from early morning until late at night, she took it upon herself to help certain people. She had a list of people who needed food, who needed companionship, who needed rides to stores, who needed, you know, to go to the doctor. And this sister, her name was Judy Hill. She was just insanely wonderful. And she kind of included me on her list, and she'd come over with something she made, some food or whatever, and spend time with me. And I really appreciated that because I had no friends. And when I stopped going to meetings, she asked me, you know, what was going on. You know, like maybe I'm falling out of the truth. No, I believed in the organization, but I said, I'm not going back. And she said, why? And I told her what I was going through mentally and emotionally, the stress of having to deal with one after another. And like, oh, yeah, I'm already, no, I'm sorry, you know. And I said, I'm just not, I can't deal with it anymore. You know, the brother Holly told me I'm a problem and he's getting too many complaints and that it's up to me to figure out how to get to the meeting, and I'm in the middle of nowhere. So she said, and she got a thoughtful look on her face. That sister took it upon herself to find somebody who would commit to picking up me and my kids for every meeting. And there was this delightful, sweet young couple, Hank and Bonnie Aries. And she came back to me, Judy Hill, and she said, I talked to Sister Bonnie Aries and her husband, Hank. They were new to the congregation, nicest people. And do you know, for the last few years I was in that congregation, they faithfully came and picked me up. So I never had to call. They never made me feel guilty. And it's hard when you're picking up somebody with 5 kids. But they were so great. They got me to the assemblies, and when a few times I did have a vehicle, you know, I just wanted to take care of myself. You know, we're supposed to be responsible and do what we can to take care of ourselves. And if we need help, then we need help. But it's not like we're being lazy or using and abusing people.
Anne Marie, you know what?
Yes.
I was thinking, they want you to come to be a Jehovah's Witness with all your problems solved before you get to a foot into the kingdom hall. Really, they don't want anybody that has needs. They want you perfect. They don't want them. That's how they are.
Yeah,
Anne-Marie?
it's sad. Yeah, who's it?
Hi, this is Stephen. I just wanted
Hi,
to, first of all, this is a very emotional topic, and I'm really sorry that you went through what you had to go through, and we all did, but what you went through was really traumatic, what you just said. And I really like Sue's comment. Watchtower doesn't really help people. They are not a Christian organization, and we need to be reminded of that. And hopefully there's somebody listening that's maybe pondering this whole business about Watchtower. They are not a Christian organization, yet they take in money, as we all know, millions of dollars from any government, any place in the world that will give them the money to be a charitable organization. They don't have one single thing charitable that they do. And like you said, you just asked for a ride to the meeting, or you just asked to buy a car that this guy didn't even need it in the first place. And he just completely, treated you like you were just beneath. And that's how a lot of these people are. And then they'll go right up on that stage and they'll talk about how Christian Jesus was and we're supposed to imitate Christ and all the rest of this stuff. And the reality is they don't do any of the things that they even talk about. And I've mentioned this several times before. It's been 2 occasions where women who are victims of domestic abuse had to flee their homes. Nobody in the congregation took them in to my father, who walked away from the Jehovah's Witnesses and was eventually disfellowshipped. He took in 2 different married women at 2 different times with kids, both of them, and even an older lady who was wheelchair bound. Nobody wanted to assist her, and they all, over time, came to live with us. And I call the older wheelchair lady Aunt Mary. I didn't realize until I was a teenager she wasn't related to us at all. She just needed a place to stay in, and my father okayed it, and she came. And it just never left me that the one person who was a quote-unquote disfellowship Jehovah's Witness is the only person that was really showing true Christianity. Jehovah's Witnesses are all about talking about Christianity, talking about love, talking about we're this brotherhood, but there's no action behind it. And the last thing I'll say, a few years ago when I still was a Jehovah's Witness, I had a brother that was coming to my house to help me do something. I've known he's actually my oldest friend in Illinois, former friend. Of course, we don't talk now that I'm not a witness anymore. And you've heard me talk about him. He was the one that was disfellowship for 18 years. And anyway, he was coming over to the house to help me do something. And his car broke down almost right around the corner. And he called me, he told me, he said, listen, I'm running late and my car broke down. And I said, well, I'm not even that far yet. I said, I'll be straight there. And when I got there, he said something really interesting. He said, he goes, you got really nice neighbors. He says, everybody stopped and asked me if they could give me. He said, even women, 5 single women, they got out, they asked, and I was like, no, it's okay. I got a buddy who's coming. He said, but the Jehovah's Witnesses, he said, they just all just drove past and looked because many of them recognized who he was because he come to visit home. They knew who he was. It was Thursday at about 7 o'clock. And even my now ex-wife saw us in the middle of the street. But it was more important for her to go and be on time to a meeting to talk about Christianity than it was to stop and actually be of assistance and be a Christian. That's what Jehovah's Witnesses are. They talk about it, but when it comes time to actually doing it, they don't do it. And it goes from the highest all the way down to the lowest. And this is the reason why people are leaving, because they get really nothing, if you think about it, out of being a part of this organization. You get nothing.
Oh, honey, it's so true, and it's so sad.
Yeah.
And what you said about your father taking in 2 different married sisters who needed to get away from their abusive husbands, I just get the warmest feeling in your heart and so much respect for your father because he did the right
Absolutely.
thing. He was, a real man is protective toward women.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you something, Marie. Just to piggyback off of what you just said, I was just thinking about that last night. It's so amazing. You're in my head some kind of way about how these males in this Jehovah's Witness organization, they're not real men. And I know I've heard the Hispanic brother, I can't remember, what is GBG? I've heard him say that exact same thing, and it's so true. I just came last week from visiting my 2 daughters. They left to move. When we divorced, they went with their mom. They live in another state. I just spent a week and a day with them. And they introduced me to a cousin fiance, and he was a male. And somebody had called and said, hey, can you give this guy a hand? He's got to live something he can't live. So I went and I gave him a hand. And I made sure when he introduced himself to me, and I had kind of a stern look on my face. And when I shook his hand, I tried to break it. And I did that deliberately, because the point that I was transmitting to him is, I'm not like one of these other people you go to the Kingdom Hall with. I don't know what you heard about me. I don't really care. All I care about is my 2 daughters. So I'm just letting you know, if anything goes south, I'm coming after you. And I know he understood exactly what that firm handshake was, and I did the same thing, when he left. So he already has it in his mind. Yeah, this guy is nobody you want to be talking crazy to, because he's not like the rest of these offended, brothers in the Kingdom Hall. Thanks, Anne-Marie. I'm really enjoying the show, and once again, I'm so sorry for what you went through. And I say this all the time: the people who really catch hell, and excuse my French, but the people who really catch hell in this organization are the sisters, especially if they're single and unmarried, and especially if they have kids. They will catch hell in this organization. They are completely on the bottom of the totem.
Yeah, they could really be picking on me. And I just love when you talk about how your father helped those sisters. I love that so much. And just on that comment, before I went back when I was still out, I left when I was 15 and I didn't go back until later. but I remember I was visiting my mother, my Jehovah's Witness mom, and her phone rang, and she's listening to this sister tell how an abused sister had called her home and said, please, can my children and I stay with you guys tonight, because my husband's just been beating me, and I know he's in a bad mood, and I just can't handle another beating. Please, can I stay with you? And she asked her husband, and he said, okay. And, you know, my mom was like, wow, that's so horrible, that poor sister, and they hung up. And then my mom told me what was going on, what the phone call was about. And about 15 minutes later, that same sister called, who had asked her husband, is it okay if this poor sister who's getting beaten could come over and stay with us for the night, maybe tomorrow with her children? Well, her husband, she told my mom, her husband, after he said okay, you know, he couldn't just be a man and make a decision as head of his house to help this poor sister. No, he's one of those emasculated men, you know, they just want to take away your cojones and turn you into a little, you know, what do you call those guys that don't have any balls? Castrated people, eunuchs. He had called the elders and said, yeah, I have the sister call, and, you know, everybody knew she was being beaten, and the elders told him, no, you cannot allow that sister and her kids to stay at your house, because you will be interfering with a marriage made in Jehovah. You have to leave it in Jehovah's hands. She's going to have to work it out. She's going to have to be a better wife. And so the sister who had called to tell my mom how it had actually turned out, my mom's face went, oh my God, because everybody knew the poor thing's going to get beat. And the elder said, no, you can't protect her. You can't take her in. Who does that?
The answer to your question of what do you call those males without balls, the answer to that question is Jehovah's Witnesses.
No, I know.
I had that same thing happen. I had that same thing happen, Anne Marie, in my childhood home. My next door neighbors, she was a doctor, very nice, and she was married to this black Muslim, you know, the Louis Farrakhan type of Muslim, Malcolm X and all that. And we found out that he used to beat her. And so the houses are fairly close together in the city, and you could just hear it, you know. And me and my dad, we were just kind of looking at each other. We just hadn't seen or dealt with that, you know, for me ever. Who knows for my dad. So the next time we're eating dinner at the table as a family, and same thing's happening again. You could hear it. And my dad slammed his fork on the table, and he got up, and he went out the house, and he went next door. And I said, oh, my God. And I'm following him, because if anybody does something to my father, you know, I'm going to be right there. And he asked to speak to the man in the house, and the guy was yelling and screaming, and he came to the door, and he said, next time I hear you put your hands on this woman, I'm going to come over here, and I'm going to beat you within inches of your life. And the very next day, that guy packed his stuff, and he left, and he never came back. And so that's what's needed in society, but that's definitely what's needed. Like you said, they will not know. And my father, when he took in this one sister in particular, the word was her husband's going to find out where she is, and he's going to do something to the whole family that wherever she's going. And my father said, oh, yeah. He says, well, I tell you what, you just make sure when he comes when I'm here, and we'll see about that. And I don't know if that got to him or not. Never saw him, never heard, no problem ever happened. But yeah, these people, they don't have any backbone. The males don't. Watchtower headquarters wants it that way. And once again, they are not a Christian organization. They do nothing that really helps people. If you got problems, they're going to push you off and really hope they just leave and go to another congregation. But they're just not set up for that. They never have been. They don't want to do it. They have no training. It really isn't an organization that's made to really help. It just isn't. And the longer you stay in it, you know, the more you'll see it, as you have and I have. And it's so true. It's just not a Christian organization. Thanks, Anne-Marie.
Right. Oh, thank you so much, Stephen. I have to ask, is RJ still on the line? Because RJ was commenting near the beginning of the show, and he was in the middle of talking, and Pixie chimed in with her comments, which, you know, he appreciated what she had to say. But then Susan called in, and I had forgotten to call out to him, like, hey, because RJ never got to finish what he was saying. He was interrupted right in the middle of what he was sharing. So I'm just putting it out there, RJ, if you're still listening or if you got frustrated, I'm so sorry. Because sometimes 2 or 3 people want to talk at the same time. And I try to be cognizant of everyone. I want everyone to feel that they will be heard and be able to express whatever they want to express, because this is your show, not my show, your show.
Hey, Anne-Marie.
Yeah, who's it?
I think somebody else called because I haven't talked yet today.
Are you RJ?
Yeah.
Well, shoot, RJ, why don't you talk now while I got you?
Stefan, he told that story about needing like assistance with his car, and then
I think that was Tom. I think it was Tom who got interrupted. Excuse me for interrupting you. RJ, go ahead, sweetheart.
Stefan's story, it reminded me, I forgot all about it, but that happened to me, like, the last year I was in, like my battery went bad and it wanted a long walk. And so basically the people in town would have seen me carrying a battery to my car a few blocks on the sidewalk. And then a witness brother told me, he's like, yeah, I saw you carrying that battery, and you didn't ask to help. You didn't do anything. Like, that's not like acceptable behavior if somebody was like a neighbor. Like, I know my neighbor would, or somebody in the neighborhood, if they recognized me, they would have, tried to help. But witnesses, they don't do that.
Well, it's almost like it doesn't enter their mind, whereas a regular person in a neighborhood or whatever, they see somebody needs help, and their natural human inclination, unless they're complete jerks, want to. But it's like the witnesses not wanting to be mean. They just see it, but they're not natural. They're not normal in their brain function. It doesn't occur to many of them to help. 6 days after I had a very traumatic birth, it wasn't just like I gave birth. I had a lot of trauma and damage, and I should have been in bed healing, but I couldn't. And 6 days, on the 6th day after I gave birth, I had to walk over a mile to get to the bank, put my money in the bank. Now I have a newborn. I can barely walk. I have a dog that just turned 3. I'm pushing her in my stroller, carrying my backpack on my back. And I have my 3 little boys who were very little, but they're all I had. And they each have a little shopping cart. We're all walking over a mile to get to the bank and to get to the store, because I'm trying to take care of my business. It's my responsibility. Oh, that's another one. The elders would always read to me, I think it's Galatians 6:5, for each one will carry his own load. And there was the sisters were walking along, and I'm in so much pain because I have to stand up and I have a lot of damage. And she drives by, and as she sees us in a rear view mirror, she gives us a smile and a wave. And I didn't think ill of her, just saying, waving and keep on going. And she was driving a car that nobody else was in it. Not like she couldn't have fit us. But the thing is, I know she didn't mean anything, but I remember just thinking, what a wonderful luxury to be able to have a car that you can get into and pack your kids and go to the store and pack the car at the groceries and drive home. To me, it was like, wow, like, does she know how lucky she is?
Yeah, and a lot of like the good deeds witnesses do, it's kind of like they use like a salesman technique, like they're all about appearances, and they're all about, whatever, promoting the cult,
Absolutely. But to add the cherry on the top of my day, the next day I went to visit my dear friend in the Watchtower. Her name was Darlene, and we were just chit-chatting because our kids really got along and we were talking. And then she looks at me and she goes, oh, Anne Marie, guess what I heard about you? You're going to think this is really funny. And most things said about me were not funny. And I looked at her like, okay, what did you hear? And she says, oh, this sister came up to me and she said to me, guess who I saw walking down the street with pants so tight she couldn't breathe. And I'm thinking the only person who would say that would be the sister who saw me struggling to walk a mile and a half. I could barely get into these jeans. I mean, I'd just given birth to my 5th child. What a mean thing to say. I mean, was that necessary? This is the way their warped brains think. It's just indicative of how Watchtower just makes us not normal.
And another thing, I don't know if I'm getting off topic here, is they really love to judge people and gossip about people. What they call spill the tea. They love doing that. Like, I mean, I guess everybody does to a certain point, but witnesses are much worse than when regular worldly people have that.
Yeah, and if I could share one last thing, if I'm not boring anybody, if anybody wants to speak, interrupt me at any time because this is your show. But just as an example of not being normal and getting in trouble for something that's really not something you should get in trouble for, I was very poor. It was the end of the month. I have, at the time, 4 little children to feed. And, I know how to stretch food and everything. And this sister called me up, sweet thing, Monday night, and she says, Anne Marie, I really want to go out in service on Tuesday, and I was wondering if you could take care of my 2 children. And I said, well, of course, but I only asked 2 things. Give them a good breakfast, and please pack them a lunch. Now, because I didn't want her to think that I just don't want to feed her kids, I said, I'm asking you because I'm really low on food. I have enough to feed my children, but I just don't have enough, to feed yours too. I wanted her to understand it's not her. I'm not trying to be mean. And she said, oh, okay. So she brought her kids. She said they had a good breakfast. Here's their lunch. I said, thank you so much. She came back later after service, picked up her kids. The kids were happy. Everything was fine. And I didn't think anything of it. It was just between her and me. Next thing I know, it was the book study, and I didn't go to the book study. I wasn't baptized yet, and I was just too tired. Three meetings a week were just too much for me, trying to get a ride and all these little kids. So about 10:30 at night, or closer to 11, this brother drives up in my driveway, and I had barely seen him a few times at the hall. He was newly reinstated. And I opened the door like, who are you and why are you here? And he's taking out all these bags of groceries. And he says, well, I was at the book study tonight and it was announced. When he said it was announced, it was announced at the book study that you and your kids don't have food. So I decided to go to the store and get you food. Now, he was the produce manager at Albertsons, so he had connections and all that. He was a good shopper. I was grateful for the food, but at the same time, I was humiliated and I felt like I had been exposed. And he was very nice and he brought in all the food and it really helped because the man was a good shopper. He brought everything that I could possibly need. The next meeting was Thursday meeting, and guess what? I got in trouble. That I was putting my responsibilities and my burdens and bothering other people with it. And it just basically caused a big problem. And once again, I got read the scripture that we will each carry our own load. I'm like, oh my God, I'm doing my best. I don't know what's going on. Anybody want to comment? I really don't want to.
Well, Anne Marie, go ahead. Hold on one second. Let me break in here for a second. This is Rick Farron. What I want to bring up, Anne Marie, is you got me thinking. These guys are very, very callous on how they handle any given situation. They don't know how to be a diplomat. They don't know how to cushion the blow a little bit. They just do humiliate. And, you know, speaking about things that really a lame brain, and I've told this story before numerous times on the 6 screens, but my former wife, she had a brain hemorrhage back in 1987. I was living in Florida, and out of the blue, she had a brain hemorrhage, came very, very close to dying. And I had 4 children at the time. One left and was married, but I was taking care of 4 children. My wife landed up in the hospital for 7 days, and she got out of the hospital. And she says, "Rick, I wanted to go to the meeting." So I took her to the meeting to the Kingdom Hall, and one of the elders came up and said, Inez, that was her name, Inez. And the elder said, Inez, you know, we were going to send you some flowers, but we didn't think you were going to make it. Now, would you, I mean, would a normal person with any understanding, any sympathy, any empathy, any feeling at all, well, would they make a statement like that? We were going to send you flowers. I mean, that is, I mean, when I think of rude comments, I felt like punching that elder in the nose. Seriously, that, you know, how rude can you be? Well, we didn't think you were going to make so don't spend the $30 to get Inez a bouquet because she's going to die anyways. You know, jeez.
Exactly. It was so insensitive. I mean, if you were gonna or you were thinking of doing something nice for somebody, but we decided we didn't want to take the chance because, you know, it costs money and we didn't know she was going to die, so we didn't bother. You know, basically that's what he's saying. Why couldn't they have said, wow, your wife's really been through it. How are you feeling, Inez? It's so good to see you. Yeah. Why do we have to be so nasty and insensitive and immature and such idiots?
Well, you got me thinking of that tonight, Emery, the way you're talking, because it's unbelievable. Now, not all, we have to say that not all Jehovah's Witnesses are idiots, but a lot of them are. They don't know how to handle a situation. They really, really don't. And, you know, they can't put themselves in the other person's shoes. They really, really can't. Here you got 5 little kids walking back and forth to pick your groceries up. For goodness sake, somebody should have just said, Anne Marie, let me take it to the store. Well, let me help you a little bit here. Just a little bit of help. They didn't have to go way, way, way out of their way. Just a little bit. If everyone in the congregation could just do a little bit for you. And that's what they do in normal churches. That's what they do in normal places where people meet and gather. But the witnesses, and then when they say we're the only organization on the planet that shows love, can you really believe that? It is just crazy.
Well, they have a twisted idea of what love is, and that's a sad shame, and it's even sadder that they don't see it. So, yeah, that was just too much. But what was really the worst thing the brothers ever did to me is when I went into labor with my 5th child. I had a lot of damage from my 4th, and unfortunately, when I gave birth to my next child, it just undid all of the damage that had been done from my 4th baby. It was also a traumatic birth because I'm not very big and my babies were big. And it was, you know, when you get tore up pretty bad and you're bleeding and you're in pain and you're supposed to go to bed and heal and you're trying to whatever. I had just gotten out of the hospital the day before, and now it's the morning after I barely got home. My dear sister, Darlene, had come to the house to take care of my 4 children with her 3 little kids. And I appreciated that. We were very close and she was very loving. And I'm sitting on the couch. It's early in the morning. I am in so much pain. I'm barely able to hold on to my baby, having trouble nursing because I'm so sore. And I'm, you know, trying to get the bleeding to stop. And here it is like 8 o'clock in the morning. And these 2 elders came to my house, didn't ask me how I was. They said they had got a phone call from my friend's husband complaining that because of me, his wife had taken 2 days to spend at my house, and it wasn't right, that I was causing trouble in their marriage. And once again, I read that scripture, for each one will carry his own load. They were very upset with me that I was causing trouble. And all of a sudden I started hemorrhaging from the stress, I guess. And I had to excuse myself so they didn't see. And I'm in the bathroom literally hemorrhaging. And I guess my poor sister, Darlene, my friend, had tried to nicely ask them to leave. When I came out of the bathroom, I was very weak. And I said, Darlene, I love you. I'm grateful, but please leave. Because I would rather suffer by myself and crawl on my hands and knees and pray to Jehovah to help me to just do what I got to do than to have this, because she wasn't going to leave me. And I said, please go, please. Yeah, but the way the elders treated me, like I was this big problem and I was causing problems in the organization, and I'm just one person. This must have happened to so many people, this type of thing. Anyone want to share, talk, comment?
Hey, Anne-Marie.
Yeah.
Anne-Marie. I'll tell you, I'll relate just a quick experience. And this is, this comes
What's your
from
name?
Lady C on their channel.
What's your name?
Stephen.
You're not getting away with it. What's your name?
This is Stephen.
Well, Stephen, thank you for your patience. Go ahead, honey. I'm
Oh, no problem. Yeah, just a quick story. This was on the JT and Lady C channel, and this was the circuit overseer was coming around, and you know, one of the businesses that they conduct is possible appointment of future ministerial servants and elders, and they all were in unanimous agreement. And if you know anything about the elder body, that very rarely happens, but they were all in unanimous agreement about appointing this one brother who was currently a ministerial servant to an elder, because he was a true Christian. He was the one that when somebody was moving, he'd go and help them move. If somebody needed a ride, if there was something that was broken and he could fix it, he helped all the friends, he helped all the, so they just, you know, this guy was a shoe-in to be an elder. He's doing everything right. Very dependable, very respectable. And so the circuit overseer gets there, and they bring this up in the elders meeting, the closed door elders meeting, and he says, well, wait a minute, he's only getting X number of hours per month in service. And they said, well, yeah, we already know that, but the reason why is because he's helping the friends and doing this and doing that and helping the friends. Well, we know what he's doing. And, you know, he in other words, he's sacrificing time doing that to actually help the friends, which helps us, you know. And so the circuit overseer says, well, if he wants to be appointed, he needs to spend less time helping the friends and more time out in service. And that really characterizes the Jehovah's Witnesses. And again, it's from the top down. Why there's no love, why they don't really help people, why they don't support and do all the things a Christian is supposed to do. Again, this comes from the very top. All Watchtower wants you to do is what Watchtower wants you to do, which is basically put money in their pocket. Through your donations, through your time, either in the ministry or going out and building properties that they can then sell for profit. Anything outside of that, they don't want you doing. And so that's why it's not encouraged. Because if it was encouraged, they do it. There's so much that they could be doing, you know, taking care of the older witnesses, taking them to the doctor, fixing their house for them if they live in a house. If they're in a nursing home, they should have a rotation of witnesses that go to these nursing homes and visit the friends. If there's young ones with kids, somebody can help with kids. There's so much humanitarian, charitable things that they could do and organize the friends to do, and they get millions of dollars from the government to do it. And instead of that, they don't do one single thing. But everybody, they're made to believe that the only way that you're going to get salvation is by our approval, doing exactly what we tell you to do, and none of it is Christian. It's all about putting money in Watchtower fund. Thanks, Anne-Marie.
Well, thank you so much for chiming in again. It's just, it's sad because it's indicative of we're not normal. We're just not normal. The Christian church that I have not been to church in over 5-6 years, but because of my health issues, and I know they don't understand. But, you know, when I got sick one time, and I wasn't even that sick, they buckle down, and they have this. They do this for everybody. 2 weeks of fully made full course dinners were delivered to me for 2 weeks. And that's what they do. If somebody has an operation, if somebody has a baby, and they announce it at the church, okay, you know, we need people to sign up, and they have a form, who's able to do what on what days or nights, you know, and if they need help with laundry or housework or whatever, they sign up. They make sure that everybody's taken care of. And I'm like, wow, I can't imagine if the Watchtower would do that. Unbelievable. But they don't. If anything nice happens, it's because individual witnesses take it upon themselves to do it out of the goodness of their heart. But Watchtower doesn't even encourage that. Oh, no, you could be spending that time out in the ministry. Anybody want to chime in? I'm still looking for Tom. Yeah, go ahead.
Hey, Anne Marie.
Hi, who's there?
John.
Wait, my John?
Yeah.
John? I'm proud. You sound so good. I bet you don't let those elders mess with your ass anymore, do you?
No, they don't. They don't even come by anymore. But I was just thinking what you were saying about just how some of the elders can be. I remember in the 80s. You remember when all that trouble Michael Jackson had got into with the elders and all that, and they was telling we had a warning talk that we shouldn't listen to any of his music and albums and now I'm hearing from a friend of mine who's a PMO. He said they gave like a little warning talk that we shouldn't go see the new Michael Jackson movie because he's disfellowshipped and that would be kind of like glorifying disfellowship people and blah 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 blah. And I said, man, not again. It's crazy. You know, it's just a movie. It's just a movie.
And you know, he was never disfellowshipped. I get so upset when people talk about him like that. He was never disfellowshipped. He just got tired of being called before a judicial committee and picking on him about his music and why did you do this and warning him that he better not do that. And he was always very disrespectful, but he finally got to the point where he was so sick of it. And he put in a disassociation letter. He was never disfellowshipped. And I know that's true too, because there were a few sisters in a group outside where I live, and the circuit overseer happened to be visiting, and he overheard the sisters gossiping about Michael Jackson this and Michael Jackson that, you know, just catty gossip. And the circuit overseer very gently reprimanded them. He said, you know, you really shouldn't be gossiping about, you know, somebody that's not here to defend themselves. You don't know everything. And don't forget, he's still our brother.
Right.
Shut those bitches up.
I remember seeing him at an assembly at Dodger Stadium, and a lot of people kind of like crowding around him, and you know, as a celebrity. And I remember at the next meeting or so, the elders were complaining that people are treating him like a celebrity and blah 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 blah. And he's just, he's just a witness, and we shouldn't. That was like a form of creature worship. So a lot of people, they gave a lot of kind of like an offshoot counsel to the whole congregation that, you know, people were seen at Dodger Stadium kind of flocking around him, and it just never ends. It never ends, you know.
Well, you never hear the governing body complaining about any circuit overseer or regional overseer or governing body member getting fawned all over. Oh, they love it. They suck it up. That's creature worship in their own definition.
Yeah. I tell you. And now, I guess the same thing they're gonna be saying about Serena Williams at the convention. You know, don't, you know, flock around her. Don't be giving her, you know, undue, you know, adoration and whatever. So it's crazy though. It's just crazy. But I just want to say hi, and
well, you know, I'd love to hear you on. I wanted to ask you, how have you been doing this last few months?
I've been doing good. Just, you know, like I said, the elders, they don't even come over anymore. And you know, I know one elder, he kind of looked at me and he said, you know, well, you just don't care and da da da. You just want to get destroyed at Armageddon and da 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 da.
Oh, don't play their game. Don't get pulled into their bullshit.
Yeah.
I have a feeling you learned to set down your boundaries. Did you, John?
I did. I really did, because it was.
You know, I'm proud of you, honey. I am so proud of you.
because Anne-Marie, I don't know why I let those elders keep me so. I was terrified of them, and I said, this is ridiculous. You know, this is ridiculous. They put on their pants one leg at a time, just like everybody else. You know, and we just give them too much power.
Exactly.
Yeah, yeah. All righty, you have a good one.
And you too, my brother. And I'm so glad you called in. I've missed you. I think about you often. And please, anytime you feel like chiming in, honey, I'm here.
Okay, I sure will. Good talking to you.
Oh, it's good talking to you, sweetheart. Anybody want to chime in? I'm still hoping Tom will come back on. And Tom was talking earlier in the beginning of the show, and then Pixie kind of interrupted with her comment, which was great. But then we couldn't find Tom anymore because I went right to Susan, and I'm sorry. I'm so sorry about that. I try to keep track of everybody. So, Tom, if you're here, if you're listening, please know I'm waiting for you to come back on, and I want you to be able to finish your comment because I know you were not done.
Oh, come on.
Okay, I hear somebody. Start talking. Anybody out there? Hell, somebody tell me a joke, something. I can't think of anything off the hook. Except that word I ran across. A very strange word made from two Greek words. And I know I told you guys, it's called a telephobia, which is the fear of imperfection. Yes, who's this?
This is Stefan again. I'll just tell you a thought that I had. I just mentioned that I was visiting my two daughters out of town last week. And one of the things that came up when they moved, they had an old truck of mine that I gave them. So when I got there, you know, the truck wasn't running and it needed this and it needed that. And I asked my ex-wife, I said, I want to ask you a question. And I said, I'm not trying to start a fight. I said, but this is something that I really, it's really on my mind. And she said, well, what's that? And I said, you keep talking about Jehovah's Witnesses, and they're the only true organization with brotherly love and this. And I said, and yet all these little things that need to be done that if we were married, of course, I would have done it because I always like to take care of my kids myself. I said, all these things that I would have done. I said, they're just piling up. I said, I'm sitting here and I'm looking and I can tell this needs to be done, that needs to be done. I said, why is it that you haven't gone to your quote unquote brothers that you know that are so loving and Jehovah's loving Lord and Jehovah? Why haven't you gone to them? He said, hey, can somebody help me with this and the other thing? And she looked at me and she just said something like, they don't have time. And I said, but that's what they're supposed to be doing. They're supposed to be caring for the needs of the sheep. This is what you need. So what is it that they're so busy doing that when you need something, you can't help? I said, I got to fly all the way to Florida and fix stuff that, you know, is not really my responsibility anymore. You left because you chose the organization. So then that organization should be doing these things and taking care of you. And I said, but yet, you know, they're not. You're moping around and complaining about you don't have this and that and blah, blah, blah. But where is this organization? And you know, I don't know if she'll ever wake up, but sometimes you just kind of wonder, like, what do people really get out of being a Jehovah's Witness? What do you really get from it? I mean, I remember somebody asked me one time, we were driving to the Thursday night meeting, and I just happened to have the radio on, and I normally wouldn't even have the radio on. You know, you don't want Satan's music in your head when you're going to the meeting. But this time I had it on. And there was a call in, and the person called in, and they won like 40 or 20 pairs of tickets to something. And it included dinner and some kind of a play or a movie or something. And I thought to myself, if I won that, I wouldn't even know what to do with 20 pairs of tickets, or 40 tickets, because I don't have any friends. And I was talking about in the organization, and I mentioned I was at the Kingdom Hall, and I said that. And I said, because I don't have any friends that I would want to be around and give 40 tickets to. The only people I know are the Jehovah's Witnesses, but they're not my friends. They're just people that I go and sit in a rectangular shaped room and say Jehovah's for the next hour and a half. But that doesn't make them my friends. And then, of course, they discourage you from forming friendships with non-witnesses. So you really have no friends. And then you don't even feel comfortable, as in the case of my ex-wife, you don't even feel comfortable going to these so-called elders and saying, can somebody help me with this? So, you know, I'm sure you guys know about cars. Can you help with that? Or I got a hole in the roof. I'm sure somebody knows about roofs or can recommend somebody. They don't even feel comfortable, you know, doing that because it really truly isn't, you know, a brotherhood the way that they like to frame it to be. So it's back to the question, which is, what do you get by being in this organization? I just don't get it. I really don't get it.
No, that's such a true point. And when you look at it logically, like you are, Stephan, yeah, what's the point?
And then keep in mind, everything that they've taught us, probably 80% of it has all turned out to be a fabrication. And we all know, because we pay attention to the various updates and clarifications and everything, they're changing their whole teaching around. So everything that we represented, all the sacrifice that we made, basically was all for nothing. Like we all talked about how we grew up in this thing, getting our asses kicked at the Kingdom Hall. I was the same way. They had a term for it. It was called hamburger, because if you're a newer person, you may not know this, but back in the 70s, in between the what do they call it, theocratic ministry school and the service meeting, there was an intermission. And I can't remember how long it was. I don't know if it was like 15 minutes or half an hour or whatever, but it was long enough for me and my dad to hop across the street to a diner, and we would get hamburgers and sodas and shakes and fries and eat, and then we'd rest back for the second half of the meeting. So when kids would get spankings, they called it hamburger, referring back to this diner. So I remember, you know, all of that and how we would be beat as kids, you know, because we couldn't sit still for 2 hours or whatever the case is. And you think about all the sacrifices that you made, not being allowed to play sports, not being allowed to take scholarships. You couldn't take this job. You couldn't take that job. You can't marry this person. We don't like this and we don't like that. All for teaching that now has been completely, you know, just it was wrong to begin with. And now Watchtower slowly, almost imperceptibly, is changing it. So again, all the sacrifice that you made was for nothing, for teaching that was completely wrong. And even being in this thing today, you get nothing out of it. Why are you even doing it? It's just mind-boggling. I mean, it's just so elementary that it's just mind-boggling that people don't just leave. You get nothing out of it. Go leave. Live the rest of your life.
And Stephan, another point people don't always bring up is meetings are very boring. I mean, maybe it's a little bit different if you're a ministerial servant or elder, because you actually got to focus on doing your part and not messing up. But sitting in the audience it's terrible. It's just a waste of time.
You're so right. I tell you, one of my last talks that I ever gave before I quit going to meetings, and it was a talk number 4, whatever the last talk is, and I was waiting. You know how you would announce a scripture, please turn the XYZ scripture, and you're waiting for the friends to get there before you start reading it. And while I was waiting, I just scanned the room. I just scanned the Kingdom Hall. And I'm telling you, for the first time in my entire life, I really looked at the faces in the crowd. The brothers, they seemed to be okay, but the sisters were all just bored. You could just tell they were completely on autopilot. The body was there, but the mind was elsewhere, and they were just kind of flipping through the scriptures. And then when they would look back, you know, at me as I'm giving my comment, I'm looking at them. They're just completely expressionless. It's like the Stepford Wives or something like that. And that was the very first time I just ever noticed it. And I'm telling you, when I got off that platform, I was extremely troubled. And I started just kind of monitoring the witnesses during the meeting, just to kind of fill the room. Like, what is really going on here? I mean, it's like these people are brain dead. They're all on autopilot. What do you think?
Well, you have to be kind of awake. Your brain has to be kind of functioning to be able to see that. And it's, wow. Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah, I don't remember too many times where I walked out of a meeting feeling good or any type of joy or happiness or anything.
Yeah. And I'm going to tell you the one that really disturbed me was the memorial. The last maybe 4 memorials, what started happening was because they merged, congregations. So we all couldn't fit at the Kingdom Hall. So they wind up renting an auditorium at a high school just right down the street. So every other memorial would be at this auditorium. And to this day, I don't know exactly what it was. I don't know if it was the lighting in the auditorium or if it just was the way, the chairs or so. I couldn't tell you exactly what. But that was the first time I really started feeling like that memorial is the Black Mass. And I'm telling you, it gave me the heebie-jeebies. I mean, I literally had shivers thinking to myself, what in the hell am I really a part of here at this thing? I never felt that way at the actual physical Kingdom Hall, but in this auditorium, it just seemed to really be a Black man. Like these people are, do the prayer, and then this whole thing is so sad, so somber. And then you pass I was about to say blood, but you pass the wine, but you don't drink it. You pass the bread, but you don't drink it. And that was the first time I ever said to myself, what the hell really am I a part of here? It just felt, I couldn't even put it in the words, but it wasn't until we had it in that auditorium. And then we had it that second time, and I said, I'm never going to another memorial. There's something about this that is just off, and I'm just not doing it. And I never went back. But you're so right. Yeah, there's no joy. There's really no joy to being a Jehovah's Witness anyway. I mean, despite what they say, the best life ever. I mean, it really is. But like you said, those mean, especially if you're a sister, and you're just sitting there, doing nothing, just watching some idiot up there bumble through words that they can't pronounce because they're not prepared, could care less, and the sisters are so much more qualified than all of these brothers. They should have been running those meetings. You might have actually learned something, and you might enjoy them if they were running them. But of course, they've got to sit there and not utter a word. But you're right. The meetings are terrible, and the circuit and district assemblies weren't much better.
Field service too. I mean, you're talking to 90% of the people that answer aren't interested, and the only people, for the most part, you can have studies with are shut-ins who just want somebody to talk to, and they'll switch the subject the first chance they get, or it's going to be somebody who's like an ex-drug addict, and then they think that it's as good as any other religion, and they can get their kids back or something like that. And it's the bottom of the barrel for that.
Yeah.
And people
you can see now why part of the reason. Yeah.
And they don't go to college, or they'll work part-time to do that. It's nuts.
Yeah. To do nothing. And that's why I remember they were asking me when I was a kid, they're like, oh, what are your spiritual goals? I was like, I don't know if I have spiritual goals. I have goals, they're just life goals. And they're like, oh, you don't want to pioneer? And I said, I would never pioneer. I said, if pioneering is the only goal you have, I'll leave, because I'm not going to spend my time knocking on doors. Nobody's there. Nobody wants this. Why would I want to spend my life doing this? I said, no, I'd rather go to Bethel and learn. I said, but even there, if I go to Bethel and all they have me doing is cleaning toilets, I said, I'll be out of there on the first thing smoking. I got better things to do in life. I said, and I think that this is part of what's going on with this organization, is that you don't get any kind of joy, true life joy, in this organization. They don't have anything for you. And they definitely don't have anything for the younger people. Younger people just go there and sit, like you said, at these extremely boring meetings. They have nothing to look forward to. Everything that they ask their parents if they can do, the answer is always no. And they try to back it up from the Bible, and they take that Bible and play it like a viola. Everything is always no. There's nothing for them. So they leave. And I'm glad. I'm hoping my two daughters, my ex-wife, can stay in that organization like the Titanic until it hits the iceberg. I could care less. I just want my two daughters out of this.
Well, at least you're going to see them. Good for you, Stephen.
Oh yeah, and guess who bought the ticket? I wasn't able to use the ticket that was given to me as a Christmas present. But guess who gave me the ticket to go see them anytime that my schedule would allow? My non-Jehovah's Witness uncle. And that just really goes to show how important family is to people around the world, no matter what the culture, religion, every group except Jehovah's Witnesses. Jehovah's Witnesses could care less about your family. They'll destroy your family. As long as you do what they tell you to do, then they'll tell you you're being a good Christian. But they could care less if your families, stay together. Look how many families Watchtower has destroyed.
And even like the witness family, I don't think witness families that are still in, like they're all witnesses, I don't think they're any more close-knit than normal families.
It could be true because they're looking.
I don't either.
They're looking at each other critically,
But they sure don't have good relationships after somebody leaves.
No,
Mm-hmm.
no. They'll
It
keep
is
you
a
at arm's
family
distance.
destroyer.
They'll only talk to you. They encourage you to come back to, quote unquote, come back to Jehovah, and then that's it. And that's one of the things that, we just can't get people to see. This organization destroys families. I mean, they just do. I think about poor Zach. Zach told the story back during Corona, where in the span of, I think, a weekend, he lost his mother and his father in an auto accident. And it was the brother, it was his sister's husband. They're still witnesses. He's probably an elder, I'm sure. And he kind of got, the story piecemeal. And then he, during Corona, you couldn't actually have a physical funeral that we're used to. It has to all be done through Skype or remotely, Skype or Zoom or whatever. And so he was able to, attend through electronically through Zoom, but they didn't even have his name mentioned in the obituary. And if I'm not mistaken, Zach is the oldest child, the firstborn. Name is not even mentioned in the obituary. That's Jehovah's Witnesses. That is Jehovah's. I mean, I can't even put into words how diabolical and demonic this group of people is. When you destroy families, all for your religious belief, your cult, the indoctrination. I don't know what else to call you, but it's diabolic and demonic.
Diabolic. That's a good word.
And
May I have the name of the brother that has been talking to Stephen?
Oh, it's on
name. Oh, good. Thank you, RJ. Didn't mean to interrupt.
And Stephen, you're going to get a kick out of this story. There was a brother from the hall, and he, like his job, he would always get tickets to events. And this was like a conference finals NBA game, and he gave it to my cousin, and my cousin just let the tickets go to waste because he's like, it's Sunday, I got mic duty.
Wow. Unbelievable.
He didn't even think about it either. Like, he didn't even weigh it out. Like, maybe I could do this just once, He didn't even think about it.
Sure. Well, look, I just got, my two daughters live in Florida, and I just got back, like I said. I had planned to take them to Disney, Universal, rent a car, go to Tampa, go to Busch Gardens. Couldn't do any of that because they got to go to the meeting on Sunday, and then somebody has service Tuesday, and then they got the meeting on Thursday. And I'm like, I understand all that, but you guys missing one lousy meeting, or even if you just listen to it on Zoom. I was like, how often do you get to go to Disney and the Universal and the Busch Gardens? No, that's okay, Dad. That's all they care about. And then they go there and they sit there and you're being taught nothing. And we all, if you've been an ex-Jehovah's Witness for any length of time, you know that they teach nothing now in comparison to what they taught in the 70s, 80s, 90s. I don't remember exactly when it went south. They don't even teach anything. What really are you missing? And like when we talk about the ministry, 90% of the houses are empty. Now, Florida's a little bit different story because you got all those retirees. But they don't want to hear this stuff about Jehovah's Witnesses. So they just politely tell you, okay, thanks, take whatever, and get out of get off my doorway. At least you're not accomplishing anything with your life doing that. But they're so brainwashed and indoctrinated that they feel like they have to do it. Can't miss one meeting, just like your friend let NBA tickets go to waste. Unbelievable.
And one thing I remember was, I don't know why this is coming to my mind, but there were so many meetings. And then like one of the few boundaries I set when I was like a big physically and mentally in witness was I went to about one book study a month because like 3 a week was too much. And then that cost me, I couldn't get baptized until later than I wanted because of that. And, some people will say, well, he's not spiritual enough. and all that garbage. And then like after I left, like they got rid of it like a year after I left. And then one brother was telling me, he's like, well, we don't have the book study anymore, so the load's a little lighter if you come back. Well, you used to say how important it was, and now it doesn't matter, and it's a good thing that it's not there anymore. It's absolutely insane.
It is way insane. Especially, I was shocked, like when I was still in the organization, they encouraged you to record the talks, to take good notes. And I would go out every year and buy a brand new recorder and a brand new microphone and a bunch of cassette tapes. And I would literally record every minute of every session at the district convention, the prayers, the songs, every talk, because I wanted to take the convention home with me so that I could listen to everything for the next 3 days. And then I find out they don't want you recording. They don't want you sharing your notes. It's like, what are they so scared of?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. That's exactly right. And RJ made such a great point. I brought this up too in numerous conversations. They used to use the illustration about your hand, you know, your thumb, your four fingers. If you grab something and your life really depended on it, you need all four fingers and that thumb to be able to hold on. And that's how we were supposed to view the meeting. But just like RJ said, then when it suited them, and we know that all had to do with the pedophilia cases, that's why they got rid of the in-home book study. But then they could drop it, you know, you drop it like it's hot, as they say, when it suits them. Well, what, like RJ said, well, what happened to this was supposed to be holding on for dear life, but when it suits you, you can drop it. But if I miss the meeting, I'm unspiritual, and I get raked over the calls. I remember in the numerous times that I was to fellowship, one of the times I missed the meeting, and the brothers came up to me the next meeting, and they said, "Oh, you missed the meeting last week," and I said, "Yeah, whatever it was." And they said, "Oh, well, just so you know, the meter has just started all over again, so you won't be eligible to be reinstated for another 6 months." I just quit going altogether.
Because you missed a meeting. Oh, they're so anal.
Because I missed the meeting. The meter, this was his words, the meter starts all over again, so I'm not going to be eligible to be reinstated for another 6 months. So I quit going altogether.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah, this is how ridiculous these people are. And this is why when people say, "Oh, can't you just let it go? Oh, can't you just," well, we are letting it go. We are moving on with our lives. But we still have the ability, if we want, to sit back and go over some of the things and some of the harassment that we went through. It was our life. It happened to us, and we have the right to comment on it, and that's what we're doing. But yeah, that's what he told me. So if you ever wonder maybe why people can't get back in a decent period of time, miss a single meeting, that might be why. And of course, that varies from congregation to congregation. That's not in the elders' handbooks. But you know, these elders, they think that they're princes of the earth. They can do whatever they want to do.
That is a mess. I just wish everybody could see it, you know, the way it really is. You know,
yeah,
it was never like that when Jesus.
That's why, Anne Marie, if you remember, there was one Saturday, and you asked the question. You and Brother Farron asked the question: where would the organization be without the elders? But you guys are looking at it from the perspective of because the elders do the lion's share of the work at the local congregation level. But my response, and you probably don't remember, my response was, without the elders, you probably have a lot more witnesses because the elders have done more to discourage people away from this organization than anything else. It's those damn elders and the very unloving, mean, cruel way that they treat people, like what you just talked about, that you were going through when your babies were small and you needed a ride to the meeting, and how cool it didn't have food, and they raked you over the coals as if they had the right to come and ask you about those financials. These people have a lot of damn nerve. I wish I could go right back into that meeting and they ask you that and slap all of them. Yes, sir.
And Stephen, I think a lot of that is the environment, because I remember one, you know, you get on Facebook and you check out what people are up to now. And then I remember one elder, it wasn't my hall, but it was a hall I visited, you know, with family and that. And then he seemed like he had a stick up his butt and a axe to grind about everything. And then, you know, in the time that passed, he stopped being a witness, and he looks younger than, like he was like a 35-year-old that acted like he was 50. And now he's 50 and acts like he's 35, and he does his CrossFit, he does his weight training, he got remarried, you know, like he travels. Being a witness does stuff to you.
Yeah. Look at RJ, I just got back from visiting my daughters. I said that 3 times now, right? I went specifically to visit my daughter. I didn't go to see my ex-wife. I had no intention of really including her in all of the plans, even when she was around. I just kept everything very light and jokey, and that's it. I didn't come for that. But she said to me towards the end of the trip, she said, because the first thing I noticed about her, she just looked very beat down. Didn't comment on it. Everybody has a bad day, you know. Maybe just needed to make up that day. It's Florida. It's hot and humid. You know, that put anybody in a bad mood. So I didn't think anything, you know, of it. But she would see me kind of almost every day going to get the girls, or I invited her to dinner or breakfast or wherever she felt like making. And you know what she said at the end of the thing? She goes, you know, you really look great. You look, what did she say? She said something about you look great. You look, I'm sorry, I'm blanking on the term she used. But she just basically, you look great. You look like, you know, things are great. And that really made my trip. Not because she said I look great, because that's care less. But the point that we always stress to these people is your life gets better. That stress level gets better when you leave. And she saw it. Because the only thing that changed is, and she even said, I said, I would never return to that cult. I said, if I had a bomb, I'd walk in there and blow the whole thing up. I said, I would never return. I said, you live your life your way. But she couldn't help but say, you look great. You look like you're, you know, prospering, and you look great, and you're happy. And I wanted to say so bad, but I didn't, because like I said, I keep everything light. I don't argue in front of my kids. I just don't do it. And I said, oh, thank you. You know, but I couldn't say the same thing to her. I just couldn't. She looked beat down and all of that. And you know, but I'm sure in the back of her mind, she's probably thinking, how is that this guy looks like this, and he was quote unquote left the truth, and then I left him and took his kids, and yeah, he looks great, he's happy, you know, everything, and here I am, and I'm miserable, and nothing's going right. So hopefully, you know, hopefully they get it. And it wasn't an issue. I mean, I had a great time, you know, and it's just so true what we all say. When you leave this organization, just like you talked about that brother, he now looks younger, he's healthier, enjoying life, he's having the ball. He never was going to be able to do that stuff being an elder. He had to act like a 50-year-old man, like you just said.
Yeah, and the good elders, the ones who truly want to be loving shepherds, they're the ones that get used and abused and picked on by the egotistical, arrogant elders who just want to be all about their authority. And my younger brother, he's my baby brother. And even my Jehovah's Witness mom commented to me when we saw a picture of my younger brother next to me and my older brother. And she said, I can't believe that my baby looks so old. He has aged tremendously. He was an elder for about 25 years, and he finally had to step down. It was killing him.
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah,
and even,
you know, I
even
say that
when
about,
I was in,
I say that about.
Even when I was in, I took like a little survey while you're sitting. The hall's always boring, but you kind of pay attention to stuff when you're looking in the back, you know. And then I looked at all the elders and people who were, you know, like in their 30s and 40s. I think there was like only one that had a full head of hair.
Oh.
So I think like any other place, like you see people in their 40s and that, I think more than 1 out of 20 will still have some hair left.
But you know what, RJ? There was something, and if Rick is still on the line, he'll probably remember this. I asked him one day, I said, do you really think that the governing body believes all this stuff that they say? He says, no, absolutely not. And when I started really thinking about it, like you just mentioned, Anne-Marie, I think it was Anne-Marie, about a guy who served as an elder, couldn't take me anymore and he had to leave. What kind of a monster do you have to be a governing body member, knowing about all the stuff that you know of that is going on in this organization, that they've turned a blind eye to, that they've been a part of, that they have, refused to go along with an investigation, did nothing to stop all the molestation of children? How do you go along with all of that stuff year after year and go up there and stand in front of those witnesses and lie through your teeth about things that you know damn well are not true? How do you do that? If you're not a complete monster, I don't even know what the psychological terms are for people that can just stand up there and do that kind of stuff. But they all have to be monsters to be able to stand up there and do. There's no way I could do that. I just couldn't. But they can stand up there and smile in their, designer suits and $5,000 Rolex watches and talk about a great thing and just lie through their teeth. That is unimaginable to me. That's why I like that word diabolical. They're all diabolical. You have to be in order to be a part of this thing, especially at that level, because they know what's really going on. I can kind of make an excuse for these idiot elders. They don't really know. They only know what circuit overseer and things like that are told them. But all the way at the top, you know everything. And yet you can still do this year after year. I don't know. I don't get it. You have to be a month.
Well, I think that's what happened to Tony Morris when he, just couldn't deal with it anymore. Always having to play the game, not messing. No wonder he drank and drank and drank. And, I truly believe that they, the governing body threatened him, warned him, and he tried to comply, tried to be submissive, tried to keep going and doing what was expected of him, because he was practically the face of the governing body, and they used that. But you know what? I think it came to a point where they picked on him one more time, threatened him one more time. I think he lost it. He blew up, and he said, I just want out of here. I can't take this hypocrisy anymore. I can't living this hypocritic life, knowing what's,
Right.
Like you said, they all know. But,
they all know.
It's a crisis of conscience. Your conscience, he's basically a good man as far as I can see. I've even looked at pictures of him with the governing body, and everybody looks like, oh, yeah, we're the best. But I looked closely at Morris's eyes, and he just looked like, I do not want to be here. His eyes were like dead. And I think that's why he blew up, and he said, whatever, like, I don't want to be here. I just want out. And I think they threatened him with disfellowshipping and being labeled an apostate. And I believe that he told them straight up, you do anything to defame my name or my reputation, I will lay all your shit bare, because he's not that humble, quiet, walking away with, okay, brothers, like Brother Raymond Franz was. And they know the damage that Raymond Franz did. And I believe that they knew that Tony was not going to back down. If they screw with him, he would lay all their shit bare, because he knows way where the body is. He knows more of the corruption than poor Raymond Franz knew. And I believe that they knew he could really take down the Watchtower. So I think that they came to a mutual agreement. You don't mess with us. We won't mess with you. And I will tell you what, we'll let you go. We won't defame your name, and we know he didn't, because the announcement was listed, Brother Anthony Morris is no longer serving. And when people say, oh, he was removed. No, he wasn't removed. They let him walk away as long as he agreed to sign the non-disclosure agreement. And I'm sure they came to a deal where he says, I just want to leave. I just need a place to live. Just please, and I'll be quiet. You keep quiet. And I'm sure they did that. And the hatred and the anger and how dare you get one over on us, because look at what they did. They only left the announcement up about him no longer serving, brother. So brother means he's not disfellowship or later labeled an apostate. but I think it was only up for like 3 or 4 days, and they took down the announcement, and then they started getting rid of every photograph where he was in it, getting rid of all of his videos.
And his videos.
Yeah, they were
Yep.
just basically trying
Exactly
to
right.
they were trying to erase him from existence. And it's further in my mind when I heard that they bought another house just down the street from Anthony Moore's house that they bought for him.
Mhm.
Why would they buy another house? Now, I don't know. I just look at things in the most logical way. I believe it was to have spies living in that house to keep a
Absolutely.
close eye on him.
I'll
And my
tell you-
husband,
I'll tell you
Go
something,
ahead.
Anne-Marie. That's what the Scientologists do. That one guy, the main Scientologist that defected, Mike Rinder, he was doing
Okay.
the videos with the lady from the comedy. I can't remember the lady from the comedy show. But Mike Rinder, who unfortunately just passed. But that's what they did. They put spies directly across the street from him, and they befriended him. He just thought there were people who moved into the neighborhood, and lo and behold, they were monitoring and recording everything he and his family did. When they would pick out the garbage, they would wait until the family left, and they would go and get his garbage and go off through his garbage. So that's what Scientology does, and I'm pretty sure that's where they got that idea.
yeah, I really think they are keeping them under tight monitoring. And my husband and I and other people have mentioned too, he knows way too much. Why doesn't he write a book? Why doesn't he come out and tell his side? Because it would be breaking the non-disclosure agreement. He'd lose the house, and
Exactly.
he'd probably be disfellowshipped, and his wife would be disfellowshipped. So I think he's keeping
Right.
everything on the down low, but my husband has decided he's probably been writing a book, but not to be published or brought out until after he and his wife are dead. Bet you money.
Maybe so. Yeah. But you know what? There's another side to that token. Because I totally agree with everything you just said. But the other thing that could have happened with Tony is that maybe Tony really did believe all that BS from Watchtower and was reluctant to start making those changes that Watchtower started making. You know, he was the one talking about the Titanians and homosexuals and all that craziness that he was talking about. So maybe he was just reluctant to change because Watchtower knew they had this whole agenda. My understanding is they hired a consultancy because Watchtower is a business. So when your business is doing bad, you hire a consultant to tell you how you can get better, do things better. And they said, look, you know, you got to make all these changes. And Tony might have been totally reluctant to make those changes. He might have totally believed all the stuff that Watchtower used to teach. And so they knew they had to get rid of them. So what do? You bring in two new young guys who are with the direction that Watchtower wants to go in, and you vote them out. So that also could
Exactly.
be what happened to Tony. Yeah.
Yeah, I believe that was part of it. I'm sure he tried to work with the governing body because you cannot see the corruption and the evil and not say something. And I'm sure he tried to work with them, and they're basically, you can't tell us what to do. We're going to do what we're going to do, and you play the game and,
Right.
you know, keep your mouth shut and keep doing what we tell you to do. And every video when people pick on him, I'm like, dude, don't you know that's a script? That he has directors and camera people and other governing body members watching every move he makes, every expression, every intonation of everything he says. He has to get it right or they won't publish it. So he's trying and trying and trying. But, you know, there's a point where it's like, screw this. I can't do this anymore. It's gonna come out. It will come out. It might take a few years like it did for Raymond Franz. But you know what the scripture says, Luke 8:17, for there is nothing hidden that will not become manifest, nor anything carefully concealed that will never become known and not come out in the open. That's in the New World Translation, Luke 8:17. You cannot hide evil to people from people who are supposedly, you know, being taught that they're in the truth. They're in God's organization. They lie and they lie and they lie.
They do. About things that don't even need to be lied about and about things that are so easily debunked. And I don't know if you heard that talk. There was a talk that was leaked, and I think it was in another country, but it was leaked, and it was all about lies. Watchtower is spending a lot of time trying to tell people about lies and how you can tell a lie and don't listen to it, and the lies all come from all this nonsense, you know. And this is what they're trying to prepare people for, because there's so much that's coming out, like you just said.
Right.
They're trying to
get on JW Analyzer. The talk
yeah,
was
he did a
JW
great job.
Analyzer, and I think it was today or yesterday. And it was someone from the British branch, Mr. Brother Bell, in an orange tie. And it was quite something, the irony of it. So it's a brief talk, and it would be worth looking at.
It really is. And then if you just step back, forget that single talk. They just have this constant, you've got to tell these witnesses, it's always the world that's against us and those evil apostates. And it's just so nonsensical, because nothing that any quote-unquote apostate is saying is inaccurate. Because if it was, Watchtower would sue them into oblivion.
Exactly.
And these things are not coming from the apostates. These things are coming from the media. These are actual court cases that people can go look at the dockets and see. There's nothing that anybody is making up. And if you really pay attention, Watchtower no longer says that the things that the quote-unquote apostates are saying are lies or are inaccurate. They keep using the term unfavorable to the organization. They don't even say that it's a lie.
Well, JW Analyzer, he breaks it down. He breaks it down. Was it yesterday or today? I think it's his most recent one, and it's called Leaked Video.
I would say it's Thursday, because I didn't have my phone yesterday. It had to be Thursday. But yes.
Well, if the listeners go to JW Analyzer, they'll see one that's titled Leaked Videos. And I think that's the one that has the British speaker.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're right. It's a great video. But I just take a step back. I don't know about your parents. My dad used to have a saying that where there's smoke, there's fire. And I used to hear that from a little kid. I thought he was talking about literal smoke and literal fire. As I got to be a teenager, I understood what he was talking about. If you have that many reports coming out all over the world, all these extra witnesses all over the world, all different ages, all saying the exact same thing, and you still think it's a lie, I question your insanity. Because just like my dad used to say, where there's smoke, there's fire. It is too much smoke for people to just ignore it and try to chalk it up to some angry apostates. And this stuff is not even coming from the apostates. It's coming from the media.
I'm sorry to interrupt. I have to ask Rick how we're doing, because we've gone half an hour into the JW World News, and I don't want to be unfair. I loved listening to you guys. My brother Rick, are you there? I'm sorry, we've gone half an hour.
Well, Emery, take another 5 minutes and wrap it up, and we'll go to the news. Yes.
Okay, people, 5 more minutes. Everybody, if you want to make a comment, let's try to keep it short, but you have something important to say, and we need to hear it. Anybody want to speak? Just remember, we have 5 minutes. Well, if anybody doesn't want to speak, we can wrap up the show right now, but I want to make sure that everybody who thinks of something has a chance to speak. Any last words? Oh, I'm right here. Who's this? Yeah.
Yeah, this is Thomas Hutz. I haven't talked for a while. I just thought I'd say hi and see how things are.
Hi, Thomas.
Nice to hear from you. Yeah, the Watchtower, boy, it's really shocking what they all have gotten away with. But I know, and I know that one day they're going to pay the piper for it big time. I think the governments are eventually going to start really coming down on all over the world. It's really good to see that $100 million lawsuit going. And well, they almost got out of that, but they outsmarted the Watchtower with that. So I'm hoping that lady will win that case. That was horrendous how bad she got sexually abused so much by that circuit overseer.
Well, that's a good point, as always, Thomas. Anything else you want to add?
I'm just really hoping to see the government do the same thing in our country a lot more. It seems like they're slower, but hopefully one day our governments will really crack down on it. It's really hurts a lot of people. I know things are really getting tougher for them. I'm thinking eventually they're going to sell more laws because there's more and more people leaving. I don't know what's going on in Warwick project. I'm hoping that won't go anywhere, but there'll be a lot of witnesses, a lot of money on that.
Yeah, they have been liquidating a lot of their properties, not just Kingdom Halls, but, you know, the fact that they have bought hotels, medical buildings, apartment buildings, at least one really beautiful mansion, waterfront mansion, and I think the UK. They're just, I can't think of any way that we could point out as proof that they speak for God or that Jesus trusts the faithful slave. They're not faithful. They're not discreet.
Right. Everything with them is just all about money. Money, 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 money. Just want to take every penny away from the JW, make slaves out, and give them absolutely nothing. Even missionaries that have health issues, they won't even help them come home to help, medical care and such. They are the most disgusting, evil, despicable organization I've ever come across in my life.
Yes, because they're all the only ones that say that they're the only true religion, spiritual paradise, the mouth of God. They have no shame and obviously no conscience. So for them to lie like they do and then say, oh, when they make the changes, it used to be we got new light or Jehovah has given us new light. Now it's the governing body has decided. So your focus is more and more on what they've decided. Oh, we have to follow them because they represent Jehovah. And it's like, and don't forget, any strange or weird instructions that you might get from the governing body that don't make sense, you better obey it. Could mean your life. Really?
Yeah, exactly. That's almost the same thing. I hope they get trouble from Ireland too.
I'm hearing you. Shady. Yeah. They have the nerve to say they don't have any reason to apologize. Yeah, we ruined a bunch of lives, but we don't apologize.
Oh, by the way, I'm sorry that so-and-so died. I'm getting that blood. Don't get resurrected. That's no big deal. Jehovah loves it. The organization loves it.
Mm-hmm. There you go.
Anyway, I just wanted to say a few things. It's always good to hear y'all. I enjoy this very much. I may not sound like it, but I sure do.
Well, we appreciate you too, Thomas. Everybody has something important to say, and it's important to add to the show. Anybody else want to say anything? We have about 2.5 minutes. Enough time to chime in and say something? Anybody who's been on want to add anything that they've already said, or if Tom is still out there, there's still time for Tom to come back in. Okay, I guess we can wrap up. Go ahead.
The JW Analyzer, he breaks down the brother's talk and the techniques that the brother is using to backpedal, we might say. So you definitely want to see the one marked leaked videos because it's not just watching some dry talk.
Yeah. That sounds good. You always have the good information, Pixie. Okay, one last further thought. We have pretty much used up our 10 minutes or 5 minutes. Okay, my Six Screens family, just know I love you. I always enjoy listening to you. Thank you so much for coming on. I want to thank all my beautiful callers that called in. Definitely want to thank Rick and Susan. Want to thank Donald and Fran and Stephen. Want to thank RJ and Tom, who came in for a while, but he kind of got sidetracked and I forgot about him. Want to thank John and, of course, Pixie. Want to thank all of you guys. I wish you a beautiful rest of the Six Green Saturday. Hope you tune in to JW World News today. Rick has some things to say. And don't forget Six Green Sunday tomorrow. Thank you all. We need to go to Rick now and JW World News. Rick?
Well, thank you, Anne-Marie. Thank you, Anne-Marie, very much. Great program. Well, a lot of people dialing in tonight. It really amazes me when you get a beautiful spring day. You'd think people would be out doing things, and maybe they are, but they love to listen in to the Six Greens. Thank you very much, Anne-Marie. Great program. Now, stay tuned for JW World News. That's the news the Watchtower doesn't want us talking about, but we're going to talk about it tonight. We're going to talk about it tomorrow on Sunday as well, beginning at 1 o'clock. So if you have been touched by the tentacles of the Watchtower, stay with us. We've got more programming coming up tonight. And then after JW World News, we go to what we call the after party. What we do is we leave the telephone lines open. If you'd like to meet some new friends, if you'd like to have a conversation without it being recorded, without anyone taking notes, so to speak, well, by all means, come to the after party. That will be after JW World News tonight. It's not on YouTube. It's not on Facebook. It's a conversation in the community of people that just want to talk to one another. So join us tonight after JW World News. Thank you for coming into Anne-Marie's program. Give us about a minute or two. We're going to JW World News. Don't leave this channel. Stay on Facebook. Stay on YouTube. Stay on our radio telephone network. Thank you very much.